Welcome, everyone. We are on episode 20 today.
Woo!
20, yeah. Episode 20 of the Awful Takes podcast. It's a show where we talk about music, movies, and I have really awful takes, and I share them with the online metaverse. And yeah, we're here.
Not the NFT verse.
No. But welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us. This is going to be technically our last recommendation for the Halloween season. This is a movie I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I'm super excited. After this, we're going to be getting back into our regular recommendations. Probably end up doing like a holiday thing too, just because I like Christmas movies and things like that, and I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, same here.
But obviously, we could start that in December. So we'll have a couple weeks of normal episodes. If you're new here, we have timestamps in the description below. If you want to skip straight to the review, please feel free to do so. There's some stuff in movie news I kind of wanted to mention. I know Wallied was out when we did our Halloween 2018 review, and one of the questions that I asked Nate and Dylan, Christopher Nolan has a new film coming out, and I guess you could call me somewhat of a clairvoyant because I'm hearing now that it is going to be kind of like a horror, have horror elements in the movie and things like that, but it's not yet confirmed. However, the only thing that is confirmed is Tom Holland casted in this new movie. So now we have Matt Damon and Tom Holland. Wallied, I guess, what's your opinion on this new Christopher Nolan movie? What are you looking forward to? And what do you feel? How do you feel about Tom Holland's casting?
Whenever Christopher Nolan's name comes up, I'm already intrigued. While I haven't really been crazy about like his last couple of films, I still need to check out Oppenheimer. I wasn't crazy about Tenet. I thought Dunkirk was okay. Hearing that he might be going in a horror direction does have me intrigued, because I feel like one thing we've gotten a little bit of a taste of with like Batman Begins and a little bit of even like The Prestige, if you guys have seen that film. But I'm definitely intrigued for sure to see what the project will be. Tom Holland, I feel like, is an okay actor. Like, I've liked him as Spider-Man. That's kind of really it, because I don't know. I saw him in Uncharted and I didn't really like him in that.
He is kind of like Sony's golden boy right now. Like, I feel like any franchise or anything they have coming up, like Uncharted, he's kind of their guy, which, like, I get it. Like, he's great and everything, but I mean, when they announced Uncharted, the last person I probably thought of was Tom Holland. So that really kind of threw me off. I don't know. I just feel like Sony uses him a lot, I guess I would say.
I don't know. And some of the performances I've seen him in, and like just some of the later films outside of Spider-Man. I haven't seen that Cherry film, obviously, so I can't say anything about that. But there's like a couple others that I've just seen him in like minor films, like this Doolittle movie. I don't know if you remember, with like Robert Downey Jr. It's not very good, but he did some okay voice acting, I guess, in that film. And so if he's going to be working with Christopher Nolan, I feel like Christopher Nolan can maybe get like a good performance out of him, especially if Matt Damon's going to be involved. I feel like him and Matt Damon could work together really well. So I'm just going to be cautiously optimistic about it.
I will say one of the things with Christopher Nolan is if you guys look at interviews of the actors that he casts and things, sometimes he'll even like meet with them. And like, interesting story, I recommend checking out. When Matthew McConaughey was being casted in Interstellar, Christopher Nolan saw Mud and really liked his performance in it. So he calls up Matthew McConaughey and he goes to his house and meets with him. And apparently they talked for like 4 hours.
Wow.
And they didn't once discuss the role. He didn't even tell him, I want you in a movie. They just talked about other things. And I feel like in that he's trying to decide whether or not is this the guy, which I just find very interesting. Like, Christopher Nolan kind of goes to those lengths. Obviously he has a vision in his head and how he's going to achieve it. One thing I will say is, out of all the Christopher Nolan movies I've seen, I have never felt anyone in any of his films have ever been miscasted. That's just my opinion. All the way back, like you said, The Prestige, Hugh Jackman, I thought was amazing. I would love for him to work with him again. All the way to Interstellar, you had Matthew McConaughey, Timothy Chalamet,
Anne Hathaway.
You had great performances. So I've just never really felt like he's miscasted his movie. Even in Tenet, Robert Pattinson does great.
Easily the best part about that whole movie.
Yeah, so and then obviously one of the more not celebrated was Harry Styles in Dunkirk, where I thought he did a really great job.
Yeah.
I know
Forgot
a lot
about
of
that.
Nolan fanboys were not the happiest when they heard that news. The fact that he's working with Tom Holland right now, Tom Holland for me is kind of in a weird zone, because it's like he's so good in Spider-Man, yet he's tried to branch outside of that, and I feel like he hasn't had much success. So the fact that Nolan wants to work with him right now, I feel like he can give Tom Holland some much needed guidance in how to transition out of Spider-Man. That's kind of what we all see him as, And I feel like Tom Holland can offer more. I just feel like he hasn't had the best directing or scripts outside of Spider-Man,
Unfortunately, but yeah.
So I think Christopher Nolan is coming along at a great time to kind of elevate Tom Holland into maybe that A-list status, Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see. The only thing that's coming to mind is Matt Damon, obviously, is the one we heard about first. So I'm assuming he's the lead. So I'm kind of wondering, is Tom Holland going to be an antagonist in this movie?
That would definitely be very interesting
great.
for sure. Because I don't think I've seen him play a villain at all. So
yeah,
it'd definitely be a side of Tom Holland we just don't know about.
But overall, I'm excited. Christopher Nolan, we will wait and see. We got 2 years left to go.
Yeah. Consider me intrigued for sure. So
another piece of movie news that I want to discuss before we get into the movie discussion is I'm a little bit negative right now, but I just want to mention it. As everyone knows, if you've ever met me, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. It's one of my favorite film franchises of all time. I remember as a kid seeing Return of the Jedi. I thought it was one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And, as you grow older, sometimes those movies that you love as a kid can become a little tarnished. You're like, damn, that's not as good as I remember. However, that wasn't the case with Star Wars. I grew up and now I just love them even more. But Star Wars has been in a weird area ever since Disney bought them out. Obviously, we had the sequel trilogy and a couple spin-off films and TV shows. However, Star Wars has been they haven't had any movies over the last 5 years. Star Wars and Lucasfilm in general have just had the biggest problem of announcing films before any groundwork has been made. And these films end up getting canceled. Writers, directors end up leaving. And just recently we had another one, and it's really pissing me off because how does this keep happening? This is absolutely ridiculous. They announced this movie, call it episode 10, call it whatever, but it's the continuation of Rey's story. And they had a writer, Stephen Knight, attached, and he was writing a screenplay. And just the other day, they announced that he's actually left the project. And I can't tell you how many times this has happened with Star Wars and their projects. I'm telling you, at one point they had Rian Johnson scheduled to make his own trilogy. At one point they had the writers from Game of Thrones writing out their own trilogy. You had Taika Waititi coming in to write a Star Wars movie. You had Kevin Feige producing a brand new Star Wars movie. And they announced these things a couple months later, the plans just fall off, And it's like, why are we dropping the ball so much? Why are we announcing these things before we're ready? Have some groundwork actually happen before you go up on stage and you're like, yep, we have this plan. We have this plan, because now it's even up in the air. It's like, well, okay, if that writer left, are they going to find anyone else? So overall, I'm just really upset and I'm really disappointed that this keeps happening because, again, in my opinion, you have Disney in charge of this whole thing. Whether you like them or not, they had big success in these franchises like with Marvel, and they laid out the groundwork on where they wanted to go. Marvel hasn't really had too many instances like that of directors leaving projects, writers leaving. The only major one going on right now is Blade that they can't seem to get working. But Star Wars has had 10 of those situations happen over the last 5 years. And it's like, what the fuck? It just hurts me as a Star Wars fan. And it's like, yeah, we have a new Mandalorian movie coming out. I'm like, that's cool, whatever. It's a continuation of a TV show. So already I'm like, it's cool, but it's not anything brand new. And I don't know. It just pisses me off because this president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, yeah, she's one of the greatest producers of all time, whatever, I'll give her that, but she has no idea how to run this company. She has no idea. Like, these projects keep falling through, and you're left with fans like me losing their interest in Star Wars, you know? And it's at the point where anytime they announce something, like, I'm just like, well, if it comes out, it comes out. If not, like, it's kind of a joke at this point. Wallied, I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but what's your opinion? You know, with everything I've been saying, it's kind of ridiculous.
You know what it is? They're turning into the DCEU. Honestly, I feel like the problem is that they're trying to build hype, especially after Episode 9 and that whole fiasco with J.J. Abrams and everything. It's very clear that they don't have a plan, and they are just trying to just get hype with the fans like you and even like me to an extent. So Star Wars could be in the conversation like a Marvel, like a DC, like any other big major tentpole franchise. But the problem is that I think what they're trying to do is that they're trying to have a plan for like a trilogy or something, but it's like they keep announcing projects, but they don't know which ones they want to start with, and they don't know which ones are going to be successful. And I think it's kind of just how I'm seeing it. And honestly, I feel like I'm kind of like at a point where I'm like with the DC projects, I'm just kind of just going to wait. I'll believe it when I see it and I turn on Disney Plus and I watch the movie.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just like, it's almost like the boy who cried wolf at this point with a lot of the Star Wars
It's embarrassing.
stuff. And I know there was even a Daniel Star Wars project plan, which I'm not even sure if that's still happening. So for me, I'm just patiently waiting and just trying to stay cautiously optimistic, because I feel like you can do a lot with Star Wars, and you can do a lot because there's just so much lore, especially with the Legends stuff. So I'm just going to be kind of cautiously optimistic and wait. And then once the film comes out and I'm sitting down and watching it, then I'll believe it's out. But yeah, I think that's just kind of where I'm at.
They
honestly.
need to get it together. Honestly, in my opinion, get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, get someone new in who has passion for this franchise, the story.
Yeah.
It's very evident that Kevin Feige, president of Marvel, loves comics. You can just tell that. You can tell that in the moment they were making the first Iron Man, even before that when he was producing for X-Men, things like that. You just always felt it. And I felt like it laid the groundwork for him when he was ready to do this Marvel Cinematic Universe. He knew what he wanted, you know?
There was a plan. There was a singular vision. And the problem with a lot of the Star Wars stuff is that there's no vision. And that's the reason why the sequel trilogy didn't work, which I won't open that can of worms too much, but it's very clear that there was no plan and that they just let the directors do whatever they want without them like basically contradicting the last film, and basically ideas they were setting up for the 7th film, they just scrap. They just don't do anything with in 8 and 9, you know? So that's why a lot of the more recent Star Wars stuff just hasn't worked, because it's like there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen and nobody can agree on what they want, you know? And so,
it's just, it's embarrassing, you know? Like, Marvel has their shit together, and granted, whether you've liked them recently or not, you know, at least they feel like they know the groundwork in front of them. You know, they've planned things out. Even with hiccups and things that have happened, I feel like they've navigated themselves pretty well. And I mean, look at DC now. Like, they got James Gunn, a guy who loves comics and loves DC characters. Kathleen Kennedy, she's a movie producer. She's worked on some great movies. I'll give her that. But when it comes down to Star Wars, I feel like you want a leader there who knows what this franchise is about, who knows, okay, these are the stories I want. You know, I feel like Kathleen Kennedy is probably someone who just waits for pitches to come to her. And then once they come to her, she kind of offers, you know, criticism, things like that. How can we fix this? And that's when things get canceled. That's when directors shift. That's when writers leave, you know, because it's like, well, I pitched this to you, you approved it, and now you have, you know, and that's just the opinion I get. I feel like if she were to come out and say, these are the stories I want to tell, you know, these are the stories we're passionate about, whether we're pulling from Legends, whether we're pulling from video games, anything, you know, and it's just like, I've never heard that from her. So there's already like a disingenuous kind of feeling. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. I feel like they needed a president who loves the franchise and who has a passion and a vision of where they want these stories to go. So get your shit together, Lucasfilm. I'm tired of seeing in the news another writer is left. Like, if I see that anymore, I'm going to lose my mind. Oh my God.
I'm curious what the guy who made Locke would have made a Star Wars film like.
That would have been insane. I don't know. I was excited. All right. I'm going to be getting into this. Full spoilers. This is a movie that if you haven't seen it, I just encourage anyone to just go out, look on streaming. It's on Peacock right now. Go find a Blu-ray, anything you need to do to watch this movie. If you've ever talked to me and you've asked me for horror movies, pretty sure you've heard me bring this up. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably my favorite horror movie of all time. So yeah, if I'm putting it together a top 10 list of my favorite movies, this movie's on there, and I'm not trying to oversell it in any way. I've loved this movie ever since I was a kid. When I first saw it, I actually didn't like it too much. I'll get into that story in a little bit. So basically the setup of this story takes place in Antarctica, so far down south, snow everywhere. A group of American research scientists are distributed at the base of camp by a helicopter. These guys are like research facility scientists, workers down there. Not all of them. Some are just there for like pilots, things like that. So it's like a mixture of people. And basically, when they're at this facility, they're isolated. Nothing's around. One day they're there, and basically a different group of people show up in a helicopter, but they are very clearly chasing this dog that is going to this facility. Obviously, the dog runs to the protection of the Americans who are at the facility, and they pretty much try to kill the dog, and the Americans end up protecting it, and then they shoot the other people who were chasing them. And we come to find out that that group was Norwegian. There's something more in the air than what we see. It is a perfect movie about paranoia and the fear behind that. And we realize there might be something more to this dog than we initially thought. That's your setup of the movie. Very low stakes in the beginning. There's enough intrigue there in that intro to just really grab you. So we'll get into it. This movie is directed by John Carpenter, who I've mentioned on this show. We've reviewed one of his movies before, Big Trouble in Little China. However, this is a very different movie. And compared to all his other movies, I feel like this movie feels the most grounded and it feels the most subtle, especially in its performances. Very low key in the performances. Nothing feels over the top. Unlike other horror movies, I feel like all the characters in this movie have an intelligence to them that I don't see in a lot of other horror movies. These guys make smart decisions. They try to resolve problems and things like that. And I really enjoy that. So right away, the intro starts out. Very simple shot. All you see is this UFO, this flying saucer falling out of the sky pretty much, and it's crashing into Earth. Very simple shot, probably is like less than 10 seconds, and then the title card pops up. That is just such a eye-grabbing way to get your attention on what is happening. And you just see this thing falling out of the sky, and the effects are done so well. Obviously, like some of the visual effects like around the flying saucer, you know, they're a little dated, but obviously back then they didn't have super amazing computer effects. This is before a lot of those movies were created, and especially for this film, it wasn't the biggest budget you've seen. The picture of the Earth is a painting. If you look at a lot of those old movies and stuff, it's what they had to do to kind of sell you on those shots. You know, they couldn't use, you know, just load up a visual creation software and have a 3D modeled Earth, you know? So already it's kind of like jaw dropping in a way. You're like, holy shit, like that's a painting. Like when I found that out, and the ship crashing is like a model, you know, it's not this CGI created image. It's a model. Yeah, it's practical. And then the title sequence, like hearing the story of what they went to just make the title, like it's something now that we take for granted. You know, you just load into a computer and you create a title sequence. Back then they did everything practical. So for the title, they had a fish tank that they filled with smoke, and they put an animation cell over it with the title card. And they had a picture frame close to the camera, and it was lined up well enough to where you couldn't see anything outside of that. And on this picture frame, they put a garbage bag, just like a plastic garbage bag, And what they did is they lit it on fire and it would burn away, revealing the title card. And I was like, that's kind of insane. Like, and granted, most people like you wouldn't notice that now, because obviously now you would just think like, oh, it's just a computer graphic. But the fact that they went through that to just simply make a title card, to me, is just like mind blowing. And I'm just like, we really take a lot of stuff for granted now.
Yeah.
And that's like an art form in and of itself, like just creating a simple title card. And the reveal of it looks awesome. Like the way the fire burns away and you see the lettering. I don't know.
The font looks really cool.
Looks so cool. There's an attention, there's a care to this movie down to some people might say like the smallest level, the smallest detail. And that's just something now that looking back, and especially now that I'm more of like a film fan and, I've made, little projects, short films, whatever, that to me is just like amazing. Like you just have an appreciation for it of like, damn, that's what they had to do back then to make this stuff work. That's the intro. It's very simple, no dialogue spoken, no intro, just a simple image. You know what it is, Earth, a flying saucer crashes. That's it. Amazing. I love it. We get into the intro. Like I said, there's a helicopter. It starts out, you see this helicopter flying over, this snowy location area, and the shots look amazing. Everything is practical. Like it looks so well done. You see this dog running through the snow and you just hear gunshots ringing out. You hear the bullets hitting the ground near it. And already, as a dog lover, it's like, well, what the fuck? What are you guys doing? Yeah. And I remember I showed my girlfriend and she was like, they better not fucking kill that dog, because it's like one of the rules of screenwriting. But yeah, already it's grabbing your attention. You're just like, damn, are they really gonna kill this dog? Like, I mean, Wallied, what was going through your head? You see them shooting at this dog. What were you thinking?
I had no idea what I was like. What did the dog do? Like, did the dog like have some like secret spy information or something? I guess that's what I was thinking of going through my head. I was like, okay, are these like scientists trying to like steal info from like the Norwegians? You know? That was kind of what I thought at first, and then as it went along, I was just like, whoa, what the
when I was a kid, I thought they were hunting the dog. I thought they wanted to like eat it or something. I remember seeing it when I was first showed it, and that was like the first thought that went through my head. So yeah, they're shooting at this dog. The dog ends up making it to the American camp, and like I said, they protect the dog. These guys, you see them in their daily life. They're at this facility. They obviously have things to keep them entertained. They have pool tables, stuff. It looks like these are regular kind of people,
Yeah.
And a lot is kind of said in their introductions and how they are. One of the ones I just want to point out, which is really smart when you think about it, is McCready playing chess. There's just something about that introduction that shows how his mind kind of works in these situations. And it plays into the ending. You see him playing chess, and he basically is in a no-win situation. And what he does, it's kind of played for humor. Pretty much the computer beats him, and he's just like, cheating bitch.
That's
and
hilarious.
Then he pours his whiskey down it and breaks it, which I would be pissed about if I was with him. I'd be like, why would you break the machine? But it says a lot in his character in that intro that I think most people don't realize. We'll obviously get into it in a little bit. But basically, the Norwegians come up. This whole movie can be spoiled if you speak Norwegian, by the way.
Really?
The Norwegians try shooting at the dog. The Americans end up killing them. One of them ended up getting shot. One of the Americans, not fatally anyways, but they kill those Norwegians. Then the dog obviously is being protected by the Americans, and one of them is like the dog controller, I guess. They have other dogs who are there. And obviously he has a soft spot for animals. And a lot is said about his character, too, when you see him kind of consoling the dog. One thing I want to mention, It's probably the best dog performance I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, easily.
I don't know
Easily.
what the criteria of that is, but yeah, this dog is absolutely amazing. Just what they had to do to get this dog to act is insane, and we'll get more behind it.
There's something so eerie too about like that dog and just him walking around like the
Yep.
lab and everything. And then I was like, what? I had just like a question of like, just, okay, what is going on? Like,
Yeah.
what is this? Why is this dog acting a little weird, you know? Yeah.
So yeah, the Americans are trying to find out why did these people, what was going on, you know? They see the helicopter, they know it's Norwegian, they have information that a Norwegian side is not that far from them. So what they want to do is go and find out, okay, well, let's go see, maybe they need help, maybe something happened. And in this small interaction in the beginning, you're introduced to a lot of different characters who all feel genuine. Again, I just really want people to recognize that. Like, these don't feel like your typical stereotypical movie characters, you know,
Or horror characters for that matter too. Keith David's performance in the film is phenomenal. I was shocked he was in the film. I was like, I saw his name in the credits. I was like, what? He was in this?
Yeah, no, absolutely amazing. And I just really like how subtle they are, how subtle the performances are. Some might have over the top lines here and there, but I don't ever feel like I'm watching a typical horror movie with your normal archetypes, things like that, you know?
And I feel like also, like, even with the over the top, I feel like that's how they would react in that situation because they're not really thinking about the situation at hand and everything, you know? And it's like, there's a lot of paranoia going on, and it's like, you don't even know who to trust. You don't know who's, there's a lot of unexpected moments, you know, that just come out of nowhere. And I feel like they're very effective.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very much. But
okay, so like I said, they realize it's from this Norwegian base. So the pilot, who is McCready, Kurt Russell,
fantastic,
and Dr. Copper, they leave to investigate the Norwegian base. Among the ruins and things, they start to piece together kind of what was going on. This is a great building of tension. This is a great horror type set piece. Again, I love it in horror films when they have arrived on a decimated situation and they're kind of left to like put together, okay, well, what happened? So much visual storytelling is done in this scene. And this is obviously the part where you start to realize there's more going on than what we originally thought. You see doors broken down. Obviously the windows are all broken. It's like frozen inside. You see an axe in the wall. You see a guy like slit his wrists, and you see blood. It's like frozen like onto the. It looks amazing, and I'm just like, whoa. You're just like, what happened here, you know? And again, all great visual storytelling, and then the music just adds to the paranoia. One thing I want to mention is Ennio Morricone. His score in this movie is really subtle, but it conveys that sense of eeriness and paranoia that you feel when you can't trust other people, you know, or you can't trust the situation that's been put in front of you. Obviously, Ennio Morricone is one of the great composers of cinema history, you know. However, I feel like his score in this movie is very underappreciated besides the fans, you know. I love the subtleness. Obviously, the main theme has like this heartbeat effect with just these simple notes kind of playing, and then they just repeat and they kind of echo just a little bit, you know. I don't know what it is about that theme that's just so striking, and it's so simple, you know. It really is just two kind of notes being played, and you know,
it's very minimal.
Yeah, very minimal. I just love it. It's so, obviously now it's kind of iconic, but at the time, if you were first watching this movie, it again fills you with that feeling of what's actually going on, you know? And while they're exploring through this Norwegian base, this music that's playing really kind of makes you feel like something's about to happen and you're kind of waiting for it, like this
Yeah.
tension's being built and it doesn't ever feel like it actually fully jumps out at you. I don't know, Walid, what'd you think of the music and everything
The
in
music,
these scenes?
yeah, the music is incredible. It adds so much to just the overall vibe of the film. There's a lot of great minimal uses, and I was surprised how restrained a lot of the music is. There's not as much score in the film as I thought there would be. So there was a lot of just times where there was just be like this really ominous ambience. And one thing I want to touch on actually is the sound design in this film is very, very scary. Like there's a moment in the film, not to jump the gun too much, where it gets really silent when they're like testing the blood. And then McGurdy puts the blood, tests the blood in one of them, and you just hear these screeching sounds that just come out of nowhere. And I literally jumped and screamed out of my seat. I was like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? And I just love even just like the sound of like the monster and everything. It's like, it really just terrifies you so much, and it fits like the visual side too. It's like it fits. The sound design of the monster fits with how the monster actually looks, and I think it just works perfectly for the film.
So when they're at this base, they stumble upon pretty much all these ruins and everything, but then they find kind of like pretty much like charred remains. I love a lot of the shots in this movie. Obviously they show the effects and everything, they show the practical effects, but they show the reactions. They show a lot of shots of just the characters kind of taking in what they're seeing, and that's something that I just love so much about this movie is it has that feeling of, yeah, the things in front of us are scary, like it looks weird, all these remains and everything, but we're also going to show the characters reacting to them. And these reactions are not over the top. No lines are really kind of spouted of like, well, what the fuck is that? Things like that. I think a lot is said in their silence that really aids to the fact that they have no idea what the fuck this is without outright saying that. I love that so much. Obviously, there's a part later on in the film that we'll get to. But at this facility, they have different, specialists. They have the pilot, they have a meteorologist, they have a doctor, they have a, radio wave person. They all these people have their, they're there for a reason, And their biologist, Blair, they bring back the remains and he ends up doing an autopsy on what they brought back. And the effects are just great. They're so haunting. Again, I said it before we talked about this movie. Rob Bottin's effects are absolutely amazing in this movie. At the time when this came out, this movie disturbed a lot of people because of the effects in this movie, and I think that really drives the point home on what I'm saying. Like, at the time, and honestly, because they're practical, they still hold up to this day. They look absolutely haunting. The stuff that he was managed to pull off with this is absolutely insane. So these remains, like, you see parts of humans, but then you see parts of like other creatures too. So when they're doing these remains and they're, he's autopsying them, he finds a normal set of human organs. Like, he starts pulling them out and he's just bewildered by what's going on. He's like, I don't get it. Like, this thing doesn't look human. This thing is all mangled and torn apart. And yet I'm finding human organs. And he's trying to piece together, and you can just tell he's just bewildered by what he's seen. And then obviously the camera goes to like a fade out. They don't use fade outs too much in this movie. I'd say there's about 3 or 4 of them, but man, are they great. It really is just like, again, there's nothing really else for the characters to say. And I feel like if they had too much speculation with these characters, it wouldn't drive home the point that these are aliens. You know, these are creatures that they don't understand.
Yeah.
I hate it in movies, and especially horror, when there's too much exposition, when there's too much over explaining of how they're feeling. You know, again, a lot is said in the pauses, a lot is said in the silences that they're out of their own element, you know. I don't know if you were feeling that as well, but that's just one of my main takeaways in the first hour, obviously.
Yeah. The creature design just looks horrifying, honestly, in the best way.
Yeah.
It just like raises so many questions for me of like, okay, what is this thing? You know, could you even explain what this thing is? And I like that the film doesn't really explain too much, especially with the biologist character. I like that the biologist character, as the film goes along, I like that he's figuring it out. You know,
Yeah.
it's almost like a mystery film in that sense of him just
Exactly.
figuring it out. And I love even just like there's a great use of exposition actually with like the computer, and it shows like the cells and how they're like imitation cells almost. I
Yeah.
thought that was a perfect way to like show the horror of the creature almost without
Yeah.
saying anything. And the fade-ins, I will say, were a little jarring at first, but as I think the film went along, it was like, okay, that makes sense for why you would use fade-ins like that.
So, like I said, one of them there is kind of like takes care of the dogs and everything. He ends up kenneling the sled dog that showed up, the one that was running from the Norwegians. So he ends up kenneling one of the dogs, and again, throughout the intro, this dog is kind of roaming around. And later on, there are some fade-ins and things, but you see the dog kind of going throughout this facility. He doesn't bark. He doesn't growl. He doesn't do anything like that.
Doesn't show a lot of emotion.
Very quiet and just really kind of moving in a way that really is just like, what's going on, you know? And come to find out behind the scenes, to get this dog to act this way, apparently they had to have minimal people on set whenever this dog was doing those shots, you know, because the dog was always easily disturbed by a lot of things. So to get this dog to act this way, again, like they really had to make sure that they put the right situation for these shots, you know. And I just love it so much that these shots are so long, you know. Like there's this one shot of the dog walking down the hallway, and it just follows him the whole way. And then we're revealed to a character sitting in the room. You see the shadow on the wall, and then you see the dog look up at him and just stare at him for a little bit. And then the dog like goes into the room, and then you see the shadow of the guy like turn and then fade out. Amazing.
Fantastic foreshadowing, by the way.
Yeah. So stuff like that. Again, this dog really sells you on this performance. I can't say that enough. When the dog is put in the kennel, puts him in there, and the owner kind of walks away. There are other dogs in the kennel who are kind of, you know, just laying there, kind of staring at him. The dog walks into the kennel in such an eerie way. He just kind of walks slowly towards the middle and just kind of like lays down and is just like staring. The other dogs don't really pay too much mind to him, you know. Once Clark leaves, now we start to get into what's going on. You hear this kind of growling noise happening with the dog, almost like a sick, like breathing almost. Sounds really disturbing. Yeah, and you start to realize, oh shit, the dog. Okay, now I get what's going on. And amazing practical effects. The dog starts growling. You see the other dogs react, cuts back to the dog, and you see the face split open. And oh my God, again, the effects and the practicality of everything is amazing, but it's also shocking. I remember first rewatching this movie when I was older. Obviously, I remember the big scenes and things like that. I forgot about this whole dog effect because when I saw its head split open, like I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it disturbed me. And I was just like, oh man, this is crazy. But the gore makes sense for what this creature is, you know, like it's not being gory just to be gory.
It's possessed.
It's possessed. This is an imitation life form, you know. It takes the shape of something, you know, and then it imitates it, but then it tries to imitate other things, you know. So the head splits open. You see these tentacles start coming out of the body through these like holes. the dogs start crying. All the other dogs in the kennel start crying. You see one even trying to bite the fence to like get out, you know? And then it starts spraying these dogs with like this paralyzing liquid, and it is disturbing. I swear this thing, like, how the fuck do you think of this? But it's perfect. It's perfect for the movie. Like, I can understand the audience who saw it in the 80s. Man, this must have really got to them, because
those dog owners. Oh man,
yeah, it is.
Imagine that.
It's insane. Now you see the dogs start to metamorph, change into other creatures and things. So basically, how this creature kind of works is it touches another life form, and it is able to take that life form shape. However, the process of what they call a simulation isn't instant. It takes a little bit. And basically, the owner comes back in, sees this creature, hears all these dogs howling and everything, briefly sees it, and immediately, you know, goes to get help. All these other people show up, McCready, everyone, they're all in there. And damn, like, what an effective scene of showing these guys reacting to this whole thing. They go in there, McCready's very quick, you know, tries to shoot it right away, and you have the dog owner. He's sad, you know, because McCready starts shooting these other dogs, and, you know, he has an effect on it. And I'm glad they showed that. It's like, a genuine side to these characters. You know, they're not just movie characters.
Not
these
robots.
these guys have feelings and things, you know. So I really love that Clark tries to stop McCready from shooting his other dogs, you know. But McCready's obviously seeing this alien, and he's just looking out for everyone.
Kill all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Know, it's like they're all possessed at this point. I know for me, that was probably like one of the most disturbing scenes I've seen in a long time. I'm not like a super big dog person, but like just the moment that like dog like opened up its like head and everything, I was like, whoa, what the hell?
Yeah.
But it was just very jarring. It was very just polarizing for sure. It was just like, I felt so scared, and I felt honestly kind of sorry for Clark after.
Yeah.
'Cause it was like, that's kind of like some of the family that he has almost, you know?
And when you're out there in this, you know, facility, you're isolated, you know, there's no phone. Like, you can't just call family or anything. These guys are out there for months at a time, you know? So you start to develop relationships with these, you know, things and everything, with these other people, the dogs. And it's just because you're so isolated, you know, you don't have those connections that everyone else does, you know? And this movie really sells you on the isolation that these guys are put in. And at one point, you see this dog wrapped up in like tentacles and everything, and it's just like crying. Very disturbing stuff. If you're a dog owner, you might have a hard time with this scene. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, when McCready yells for Childs to go get the, you know, flamethrowers, torches, and everything, you see arms break out of this thing, and it tries to grab up on the ceiling and like pull itself up.
Like a spider quality to it.
Yeah, you see, again, like, these effects are crazy and everything, but they use certain shots to show that this thing is smart, and it's trying to hide. It's trying to get away from them. It's not just standing there. It's not just trying to kill them. I think that's something that I like too about this monster, is it does try to hide. It's not just a simple, I'm going to walk in front of you and kill you. It knows the smartest way to take over this whole place is to do it where I make them kind of trust me, you know? And that really shows you the smartness of this creature. I love it when movies have that, especially horror, where the villain, the slasher, anything is not just in your face trying to come at you, that there's a smartness to how they want to play it. That's just really scary, and it's really eerie. And then you see this dog face, you see these eyeballs. This thing looks like an amalgamation of everything. And then you start, later on, obviously, you piece it together that this thing has taken on many life forms. And everything you're seeing is like a previous life form that it's possessed or anything, you know?
Yeah.
And that really has like this Picasso-like effect of just throwing random stuff and making it really eerie. At one point, this part like splits open and it looks like this flower thing like comes out and then it opens up and you see all this teeth. What that actually is, it's not like a flower. It looks like one, but what you're seeing is it comes out and when it opens up, all the petals are meant to be dog tongues and the teeth in it are actually dog teeth. So again, really fucked up, really disgusting.
Oh my God.
But it looks amazing. Oh my God. I I just love the effects in this movie. So they come in, they torch it. After they torch it, there is a great moment of all the characters just standing there, not saying anything, and they're just like staring at what they saw. Again, as a writer, most people might try to put in a line or dialogue, something happens, but the fact for me that they don't say anything says a lot.
It's them trying to process everything they just experienced right now.
Exactly. And the performances, just them reacting to what they're seeing.
Fantastic.
Again, that's a testament to the effects. These actors were seeing this shit in real time. And it's not CGI, you know, they weren't staring at a green wall and they're like, oh yeah, just react. You know, this is the fact that the effects are real gets that genuine performance out of your actors, especially of like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? This thing looks insane, you know?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised how subtle a lot of the performances were in this film, you know? Because especially a film like this, I could see it being a bit more over the top, especially between this and like a Big Trouble. It's like the contrast is so different.
Crazy.
You know, so I love that. I love that a lot. But
Blair, he autopsies the dog thing and summarizes that it's an organism that can perfectly imitate other life forms. So now you kind of are, these characters are putting things together. And I love that. I love that they're trying to figure out what's going on. Obviously, some of them think that we're going to become famous. We found this alien, things like that. But also there's a very critical side to them as well. You know?
Yeah, I like that the film explores both of those sides too. You know, I like that.
I really appreciate that. So they're bewildered by everything that's going on. They're also scared. They're the only ones there. They're stuck there. No help is coming until winter's over, you know.
And there's a monster that's basically imitating people and dogs.
Yep.
So, that makes it extra scary.
The data they recovered from the Norwegian base leads the Americans to a large excavation site containing a partially buried alien spacecraft. So in the footage and stuff they examine, they see brief glimpses of this Norwegian team excavating this thing that they found, this spacecraft. So they go to it and they check it out. Great painting, backgrounds, and everything looks fantastic. They put together that this ship crashed thousands of years ago, so long ago. They can't really have a really good estimate. One of them I think says around 10,000 years old or something. So already now you're thinking, damn, that intro that I saw with that ship falling, a long freaking time ago, and this thing's just been waiting. I don't know. I love that larger than life feel that obviously these characters are pretty much out of their own element. You know, they're against something that's way stronger, smarter than them, yet they are very real to know the situation that they're in and how to best look out for each other, how to best look out for themselves, you know, and not to mention the paranoia, especially in one of the characters, Blair. He starts putting this stuff together faster than the team does, and it ends up leading to him having almost like a mental breakdown. So Wallied mentioned it earlier, there's this computer program. And while they're out searching that crash site, Blair's examining these life forms and everything. And this computer program, it's a little dated, you know, it looks like Atari. But obviously it's in the 80s. Shows you that this thing is so, you know, it's like a pathogen, you know, virus pretty much down to the cell level. These cells imitate other cells, you know. This cell takes hold of one and it makes a perfect exact copy. And through this computer simulation, he puts together, okay, how does this work? You know, like at what point are we fucked? At what point are we screwed? And the computer tells him, you know, if this creature was to come in contact with the rest of humanity, I believe it's around 3 years before it will have killed everyone on Earth. That's how long it would take. And the program tells him this. And in seeing that, it sends him down a spiral of like, you know, I mean, what would you do if you were before this life form and you saw that if this thing makes it to humanity, they're screwed, you know? Like there's no helping them.
Their species is gone basically. And he has like this almost kind of existential crisis when the other people come back and he's just like destroying everything in his lab.
And it shows you like, okay, we thought this thing was kind of small scale. Obviously it's very isolated, but there's also a very real effect on the rest of the world. And these scientists, these research people take it upon themselves almost as like a responsibility, especially Blair. But he does it in a way that's really dark. He starts freaking out, breaking everything. He doesn't want them to leave because he knows if this thing gets out, humanity's basically screwed.
Which is a very terrifying thought to have.
Yeah, insane. So when Blair's freaking out and everything, they're trying to gain control of him. He's obviously breaking stuff. He has a gun. He's shooting everywhere. And again, paranoia. Almost kind of leads into like a mass hysteria type of situation where, you know, just the knowledge of things freaks people out. The knowledge of extraterrestrial creatures, things like that, has a very real effect. He's smart enough to put that together of like, I'm screwed, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love the character of Blair. I love his performance. Really eerie, really, again, subtle. You know, he's not over the top or anything.
It's very realistic, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary, but yeah, it's like he actually acts like a real scientist, you know?
Exactly. And then the group starts to implement controls to reduce the risk of a simulation, you know? And I love that. I love the smartness of them to quickly realize, okay, if this thing is on a cell level, we need to make sure that we're not doing anything to contaminate each other, things like that. And pretty soon you start to realize, you know, the paranoia amongst each other, you know, if this thing can imitate other life forms in anything, how do I know who is who? The remains of the malformed humanoid assimilate an isolated Bennings. So Bennings is in this room working with the life forms and everything, or not working with the remains that they were preserving to take back, you know, to humanity. But now they realize we can't do that. We need to make sure that we're getting rid of all this stuff, you know. There's a danger. And in that process, great foreground and background, you see Bennings kind of working, you know, in the background. And in the foreground, you see like the blood kind of melting and dropping onto the ground. And already in just such a simple shot, you're like, fuck, this thing's gonna
it's gonna get the next person.
It's gonna get him. And then the next thing, Windows is coming into the room and he sees Bennings in the corner getting like pretty much assimilated. He's changing into the thing. And Windows obviously freaks out. That's such a crazy shot. And then the synth stuff that plays in that, I don't know why, it's just so eerie to me. So he runs to tell the other team. They realize what's going on. They see the broken out window in there. He basically broke out and he's outside. And then it shows, for me, just an effective shot. It's personally one of my favorites. Most people might look over it. But the silhouette of pretty much Bennings, but he's also the alien, running away. I don't know why that makes my skin crawl a little bit, and it makes me feel really eerie of, like I said, this thing's trying to hide. It doesn't want people to know what it is. And just that simple shot, it cuts to him. The music plays like a synth, and you just see him kind of stumbling, running in the snow. Really effective. To me, I love that shot. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just makes my skin kind of crawl.
The shot I think makes my skin crawl a little bit more is like further on in that scene where he has these like kind of gross looking hands, and he's just looking at the crew before they kill him.
That's great. Yeah. So basically, he runs. He doesn't realizes he's not going to make it. The group surrounds him. They know they have to kill him. They have to burn him. And it's just the reveal. He turns and he looks up and he stares at them, and then he lets out this alien noise, really freaky. And you see his hands and you're like, fuck, like he's an alien now. And then they burn him. All the flames in this movie are practical and they look amazing.
They don't look like CG fire.
Gosh. And the cinematography, absolutely genius. Everything looks so crisp, it looks so clean. And I love the contrast of the lighting of the facility is very blue. And then when they light a flare or they use the flamethrower, it's very red. So you have like this contrast of blue and red. It really looks amazing. Anytime a character lights a flare, it's real. And you could just tell like the way they compose these shots and the lighting on this facility. I don't know. To me, it's perfect.
Yeah. I'd love to know how they did that. Honestly.
And it also shows those two sides of like, red being, very reminiscent of humanity and everything. Blue being that isolated coldness,
Yes.
Absolutely great. So then the team after that, they burn everything. McCready has great lines. He's basically saying, this thing could be any one of us. We need to make sure we're going about this the right way.
He portrays paranoia in a really fantastic way too. Like to a point where it's like an extreme.
Exactly.
And I really, really love that a lot about his character.
And then the team imprisons Blair in the tool shed. They don't trust him after he sabotaged everything. He ended up sabotaging the helicopter, all the vehicles and everything.
Yep.
So they're stuck. They're basically now it's months later until they're gonna get saved.
I honestly thought like they were all gonna die by then because I was just like, there's no way. Because it's so cold there. Like half of the facility is pretty much destroyed, and you have this alien just all over the place, and you don't know who is who.
And a bit of authenticity too. These facilities that as portrayed here, they're real. They have these facilities in Antarctica that they leave teams and research people at, and they're not. Basically, when winter comes, it becomes impossible to go to those facilities and to check up on them. So for months at a time, they're isolated. These things are very real. So they imprisoned Blair in the tool shed after pretty much he sabotaged everything. And then Copper brings up, maybe there's a way we can test to find out who is who,
Oh my God.
Very smart to have a character kind of jump the gun a little bit. It's like, okay, well, now the thing has a leg up on us. He can infect and impersonate people we know. Now the humanity is like, well, maybe there's something we can do to have a leg up on this thing, And I love that. I love the back and forth kind of game,
It's a game of cat and mouse. Yeah.
Like the intro, it's like a game of chess, very strategic in how you want it. And everything has to be lined up perfectly. I love that. So he suggests, kind of testing Crew's blood and everything. So obviously they go to get the blood. You see it leaking out of the fridge. Someone has been fucking with it. And already you're like, well, shit. We just killed Bennings. He was an alien. Now we know there's another one here. They don't know who it is. And already you see accusations getting thrown out. Well, I didn't have the keys. I return them to you as soon as you give them to me. I open it, I unlock it, I lock it back up, and I give the keys back. And the guy with the keys is just like, well, it's not me. I know it's not me, Like, I wouldn't do that, And the alien's a very real threat, but the paranoia is just as much of a threat amongst each other. They don't know who to trust.
Yeah. Especially at that point.
Yeah.
Like half of the crew has like died.
Exactly. And it's just, I love the paranoia portrayed between them, because that's just as scary. Imagine you're with 8 other people and you can't trust any of them, and you feel like at one point one of them could kill you. Like, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
And you see the panic. Windows immediately runs to the gun closet, tries to grab guns to have a leg up on everyone else. Luckily, he is stopped by the security officer there, and they have to have a very real talk of, okay, we can't all have weapons because at that point we're all going to kill each other. We need someone who's basically kind of put in charge of everything. And everyone kind of agrees on who it should be. Obviously, it's McCready. Up until this point, he seems like the most level-headed person in this whole situation.
Yeah. They even address it in the film. He's like, oh, you're like the least tempered out of everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. And it kind of shows some of the other characters too, like Childs thinks it should be him.
Yeah. Should not.
Yeah. And McCready's just like, yeah, how about someone a little more even tempered?
Yeah.
Because when you have guns and you have weapons, all it takes is that feeling of paranoia and someone's dead. So they're trying to figure out, okay, well, if this blood's destroyed, we still need to find a way to make this test and have it work. Later on, Windows and Nolans find Fugues. He's one of the other characters. They find his burnt corpse and summarize that he committed suicide to avoid a simulation. It happens off screen. So much of this movie, you will realize towards the end, important things happen on screen, but important things also happen off screen.
There's a lot of implications.
And I think it's meant to convey that level of paranoia of we can assume what happened, but like the characters, we don't know exactly what happened, you know? And I'm glad John Carpenter trusted the audience just as much, and he really lays things out in front of you, and he's like, I'm going to let you kind of piece this together as well. It's not just the characters piecing everything together. You as the audience, you have to kind of find out what's true and what's not true, Yeah.
And I think it too gives like that fear of the unknown also, because there's a lot of unknowns about the monsters, a lot of unknowns even about the people, it's like, you think you know about them at first, and it's like as the film goes along, you kind of find out more about their characters, and you see if they're trustworthy almost or not.
Yeah, they find these, the burnt corpse and everything, and they're kind of left to like, okay, well, what happened? And they don't get a full picture of exactly what went on, but the reveal, which I thought was really eerie, is McCready and Nolans, McCready tells Nolans, you're going to come with me. We're going to go up to my shack. We're going to go investigate. And they're like, well, why are we going? Nolans is like, why are we going up there? And he's like, well, when I left yesterday, I turned the lights off, and just shows the shot of this shack and the lights are on. And that would terrify me.
I would not want to go to that shack.
I wouldn't go either. I'd be like, let's just burn it. We'll burn it from the outside. So yeah, I guess in that kind of shows the bravery of these, McCready is just he wants to find out, and he's trying to piece this together just as much as we are. And then McCready and Nolans aren't really shown. That whole interaction of them going up to the shack and everything isn't really shown. And I think it's important that it's not shown. During the return, Nolans abandons McCready in the snowstorm, believing he had been assimilated. They find torn clothes in his shack. And basically, this thing has to break out of you after it's assimilated you. So naturally, your clothes and stuff are going to get ripped up,
Yeah.
So Nolans thinks, oh, well, he shows everyone. He's like, I found this, and I don't think McCready wanted me to find it because he had it stashed away somewhere. So now you're like, well, fuck, who's the thing? Who isn't the thing? You're trying to like figure this out. And the team kind of debates, well, okay, is he going to come back? Like, what do we let him in? What do we do? And there's some tension amongst them, but it's really great. I love, again, like they were trying to piece it together. Some have known McCready for years. They're on his side. Some aren't so easy to trust him, and even as the audience, you're kind of like, well, I don't know. You don't know exactly what happened. And then you see the door handle start to get fumbled with. They realize he's outside.
They cut off his rope.
Yeah, they're like, what do we do? Do we let him in? Do we not let him in? Do we open the door and just kill him to be done with it? Very real kind of consequences are being thrown out. You know, it's like, well, what do we do? How do we solve this situation? And then they realize McCready kind of went back around the building and went into the storage closet. So they run in there. He's already broken in. It's awesome. I love it. He has dynamite and he has a flare lit up. And he's basically like, if you kill me, we're all going to die right now.
Yeah.
Again, a chess move. He's not willing to give up. And he now has control over the situation. And a lot like chess, sometimes you're in control. Sometimes you lose control and you have to gain it back. Strategy, you know?
Yeah. He'll do anything to prove that, like, he's not the thing.
Exactly. And in this whole interaction, one of the crewmates ended up getting injured and looks like he's having a heart attack pretty much, and they don't know what's going on. But McCready gains back control, gets a flamethrower and everything, and he's pretty much in charge again now. But he very clearly states that he knows he's not a thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And if he was, he kind of has the moment right now to kill everyone.
Would have killed him.
Exactly. So Norris is the one who has the heart attack. And now they're attempting to save him. This, to me, is one of my favorite scenes in movie history. The effects in this scene are absolutely incredible. I know everyone praises Alien for the chest burster scene, but this tops it in every way possible.
Easily.
And I'm sorry, Alien fans, it just does. The effects are absolutely incredible. So Copper's trying to resuscitate him. They realize they need to get a defibrillator. And in this whole interaction, McCready's kind of telling them, like, I know you think I'm this thing, but I'm not. And then in the foreground, you see one of them grab like a knife, you know, and it shows that kind of, it's genius in a way. There's two buildings of tension. You have the very real heart attack stuff going on, and then you see another character in the foreground holding a knife, basically standing, waiting for McCready to do something. So you as an audience member are like, well, shit, you know, like what's kind of going on? And the paranoia is like quickly settling in of like, something's about to happen, you know, and I don't know exactly what it is. And all these characters, you know, they're arguing and everything. Copper goes to defibrillate, and the chest of it pops open, and it's like a mouth. And Copper's hands go in it, and the mouth collapses on his hands and pulls him off. Copper's screaming. They're reacting to everything. Copper quickly like falls to the floor. Blood's getting thrown everywhere. And then this thing's chest opens up. All this slime comes out. You see these tentacles, this noise, everything's going on. Then you see this like spider-like thing jump out, holds onto the roof, and then you see it has like Copper's face on it, and it's like looking around the room, and it's making these alien noises. And McCready's just like, everyone's like telling him to burn it and everything. And then he lights it on fire. And while it's on fire, the head of the body that was getting resuscitated pulls apart in a desperate attempt to like save itself, because every part of this alien is like its own organism. The head is getting like ripped apart, and you see all this slime and everything. The entrails getting like, there's bubbles popping out. Then the head falls on the floor, and while the head is like dangling off the counter, you see its tongue moving everywhere. You see the head like moving around. And again, the whole time, this is all practical. This isn't CGI. These are real effects. The head falls onto the ground. Then all of a sudden, eyes pop out of it, and then it grows legs like a spider. And then it starts crawling away. It's insane. And then Windows turns and sees the spider on the ground. He's all, what the fuck? He's all, what the hell? And then McCready lights the spider on fire. The scream it lets out is like this echoing alien-like noise. This sequence is amazing. The effects in it are mind-blowing. To this day, I still don't know. It's movie magic. I still don't know how this exactly was done. I've seen a lot of behind the scenes and everything, and it's insane the amount of stuff they did to pull this scene off, and it looks absolutely amazing. And it's terrifying to see this thing. I don't know what was going through your head watching the chest resuscitation scene.
It surprised me, because it's just like it comes out of nowhere. You're not expecting the scare to happen, and it's like once the stomach opens and it like turns into a mouth, I genuinely just jumped. I was like, wait, what the hell? Like throughout the film, that was what I kept saying throughout. I'm like, what is going on? When is this alien gonna come out? It's like you don't expect it, and I love that so much. And just that whole sequence, my jaw was on the floor. I'm like, how do you come up with something like this? Like, how do you even think to make alien that just shifts into like 5 different things throughout the whole sequence? And I love just how the scientists interact. And I was just like in that same headspace almost as them, where I'm like, what's going on? How are they going to kill this thing? Is he going to get the flamethrower thing right on time? And so it was just a lot of me very scared, very tense, anxiety inducing for sure. And that has to be and I've been saying this throughout the whole extravaganza, but this I think takes the cake as being one of the scariest scenes I think I have probably ever seen in a horror movie, easily, aside from the blood scene, which we'll get into. But yeah, easily for me, this is one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen.
And again, Rob Bottin's effects are absolutely amazing, but it's an amalgamation of so many things working on so many levels. You had the original storyboard designer. He kind of had ideas of where he wanted to go. Rob Bottin saw those designs and loved them. And it's like, how do we achieve this practically? Rob Bottin was often on set kind of asking them, how do we light this? Because, we're using rubber, we're using latex. If we light it too harshly, it might come off cheap. People might kind of see stitchings. They might kind of see, where the legwork was kind of done. So again, it's collaborative, a lot like film. It's like he has such a devotion to his own effects that even he thinks, okay, well, how do I light? I want to make sure you guys light these right, because if you put them in bright lights, it might ruin the whole effect, and it might be worthless.
And I think that surprises me, because it's like he wants to get it as authentically as he possibly can.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that with some horror films where it's like sometimes it kind of looks a little cheap or looks a little fake, but it's like I don't feel that watching this film. It never distracted me. It never took me out of the film in any way. It was just genuinely terrifying from start to finish with all the practical effects.
And I feel like this is, for me, a good part to bring up. The movie that came before this movie is The Thing from Another World, based off the story by John Campbell.
Another John.
Called Who Goes There. That first movie's great. I like it. Obviously, it's an older black and white science fiction kind of movie. To me, science fiction had the 2 greatest eras in cinema, the 50s and then the 80s. Was just amazing for science fiction. However, in that first movie, there's no effort to put in the assimilation from the original story. In that first movie, you have a very Frankenstein-like monster, just a guy walking around, and there's no paranoia of this guy shifting into other people. It's very much just like an alien, and he kind of walks at you and everything. John Carpenter loves that movie, The Thing from Another World, but he also loves the original story. So when he was adapting this, he was like, I want to have that assimilation aspect. But then he also saw Alien, loved it, but he also saw, okay, it's a guy in a costume, or the puppet effects, things like that. And he's like, I want to make sure I kind of stray away from that, So in that, him and Rob Bottin did a lot of animatronics, machines, things that can move on their own, and you don't have to have some guy in a suit kind of standing there. At no point does this movie ever have that, and I love it so much because of that. That's one of my faults with the original Alien. It's a guy in a suit, it's great and everything for a time, but
it's a little distracting.
This movie achieves so much more of it being this alien life form and them using animatronics. Like I said, when this thing chest rips open, looks amazing. When that thing pops out and goes on the wall or goes on the roof, and you see the head of like Blair moving around, you see his eyes looking around, and then like I said, you see that head splitting off of the body. Animatronics, everything that they did in it achieves so much, you know, and I just love it for that. Fun fact, when they were making this, Rob Bottin, he knows what he wants, but again, it's like you have a vision. Yeah, how do you do this practically? You know, because you have to be the one to design all these effects, make it believable, and make it achievable, you know? So when you have a head splitting off from a body, how do you do that practically? So he made like this amalgamation of like, I think it was like gum, burnt rubber, things like that.
Oh, wow.
Apparently it smelled really horrid on set and it was really bad. And he designed this whole thing pretty much. And the problem is to rig all this stuff to go off in this way takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And I think it took him like, to get everything set up in that way, it took him a couple months actually to set everything up for this one shot. Wow. And in it, they were going to shoot it, and then he realized there's no flame underneath the shot, because in the original shot, McCready shoots at the flame and it's burning. However, when we cut to the shot of the head splitting, there's no flame below it. So he's like, we need to light a flame there to make sure that we have that continuity, you know? Yeah. It's like a blink and you'll miss it thing. I'm pretty sure now that I'm saying it, most people probably don't even realize it's there, but he does. So then they light this flame underneath the head when it's splitting off, and the flame actually ended up kind of exploding their gum-like substance that they had, and the shot was ruined, and they had to set everything back up over a couple months.
Oh my god, that sounds terrible.
I know, but the finished effect, the final product, again, absolutely amazing. I love this scene. And then not even to mention the spider head that crawls around on the floor with the eyes.
That was really disturbing.
Really disturbing. The sounds it makes. The flame, again, has that redness to it and lights the scene in such a great way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love this scene. Was not expecting it. Fun fact, when I saw this movie originally, I stayed home from school because I was sick, and my dad stayed with me. And he put on movies, and he ended up putting on this movie. And I was like falling in and out of sleep. I believe at that time I was sick with like West Nile or a flu because I felt awful. And this is the only time it's ever happened for me watching a movie. When this chest burster scene actually happened, not chest burster, the splitting open of this thing, it made me sick enough to where it got to my stomach in a way where I actually ended up throwing up.
God.
Granted, I know I had the flu and everything, but me seeing that image of this stomach splitting open and this guy's arms going in it, it was effective enough that I threw up. And I always remember this movie for that. And again, it's the only time it's ever happened. But yeah, I felt awful. So yeah, great part. And obviously past that, at this point, things are falling apart. A lot of their people are dying. They need to figure out something. McCready realizes this thing reacts to pain and reacts to extremes. And if they put this thing in any type of situation, it might want to just run from it and try to protect itself, you know? Mm-hmm. Very smart. He's putting it together, obviously, with the head splitting off and everything. This thing's going to do whatever it needs to survive. So he comes up with the idea of, obviously, the blood test that they were talking about earlier. But he has a very genius idea of lighting this copper wire and putting it against the blood, because he thinks that, all right, every part of this thing is a living organism. If I put something like a hot needle to it, it's going to try to run, it's going to do whatever it needs to survive. And the whole crew thinks he's full of shit.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, how does this,
it's like,
how did you even
work?
put this together? How does this even work? And the whole time you're kind of left wondering, like, okay, is this going to work? Like, and like Wallied said, great sound design. He cuts, their finger, draws blood, takes a needle, copper wire, heats it up with the flamethrower. He pushes it into the blood, and the searing sound plays. And there's also a little humor in the scene too. You see parts of they do it, and then I love like the quick transitions of just showing, oh, now that guy's with McCready and they're testing like the next person. I love the humor of that. I think it's not meant to be funny, but for me, I find it funny.
There's some humor in the
because
scene.
it's like Childs. He's all, this is a crock of shit. Like, what are we doing? And then he does his blood, and then all of a sudden he's just standing with McCready with like a flamethrower. Yeah, I love it. And then not even to mention the humor of when the blood's tested, like Charles is all, well, cut me loose. Damn it, I'm next to these two guys. I don't know who they are. And, it's funny, but it's also, again, it plays into it. So when they're testing this blood, you as an audience member, you don't really know if it's genuine or not. Like,
yeah.
I mean, technically it sounds right. Like, okay, that makes sense, but who knows,
It's like an experiment, basically, at that point.
Pretty much, And then they get Gary. Gary's the one.
Gary.
They're about to test Gary's blood, and then great dialogue. He's like, you were the only one who could have got to that blood, so we're going to do you last. And he was testing, he was talking to Gary, and he was about to test Palmer's blood. Again, the whole time you don't really know what's happening, presses it into Palmer's blood. The thing just leaps out. You just hear this loud scream. Not a loud scream, but just like a high-pitched kind of screech.
That scared me.
That's a great jump scare. Like, that's a great jump scare. Like, it's not... There's no dramatic music that plays. It's just a very real reaction to, oh shit, this thing was the thing the whole time. And then the effect too looks great. Like he just pushes it into the tray, and then you just see it leap out of his hand.
It goes on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I love that. And then all of a sudden you see Palmer start to shake, and they're like tied to him and everything. And oh my God, it's crazy. And then you see like blood coming out of his eyes, and he like turns to them. Oh my God, it's insane. And then they're trying to light him on fire. McCready's flamethrower is not working. He's trying to get it going.
Yeah.
And then the thing like flies to the roof. It just looks great. Everything looks great. Falls to the ground. Its head splits open, a tongue grabs windows, pulls him in, and it just bites down on his face. And just the utter paranoia of everything that's going on. McCready can't get his flamethrower to work, and this thing's there. And oh my God, the effects are just, again, great effects. It looks amazing.
Looks so realistic.
Yeah, it looks so realistic.
Oh my God.
Crazy situation, and then McCready eventually gets his flamethrower working, turns it on. Then the thing gets up, walks out, and you see even the effects when it's on fire. You see the head still moving around. It's like clamping.
Oh God.
Looks great. And then the thing walks out into the snow, and McCready throws dynamite at it. It explodes.
Great explosion shot, by the way.
Yeah. It looks amazing, and not even to mention the fire effects. Like, there's a guy literally on fire, and he's just walking out. I love it. I think it looks amazing. So McCready, obviously, now there are two more men down. So it's him, it's Childs, and
the biologist.
Yeah, and then obviously Blair. Blair was still in his location.
Mm-hmm.
So there's three of them left, and Blair. McCready and Nolans are going to go test Blair. Childs is left to remain on guard. So they go to test Blair. He's not in his camp anymore. They find like giant hole basically in the camp, and you're like, shit, when did this thing get to
No.
him? But then it also calls into fact, like when he was talking to him earlier, was he the thing? Like he was like begging to be left out. He's like, he's like, just get me out of here. Get me out of here. I'm like, damn, was he the thing then? That's kind of scary. You know?
And there's also a little thing too that I noticed where there was like a noose there. So it was like, okay, was he like going to kill himself before they go and investigate?
So maybe it was. Maybe it's like with the doctor who lit himself on fire because he knew he was going to be simulated, you know? Maybe that's what Blair was going to do. Maybe he's going to kill himself before this thing could get to him.
Exactly. It's eerie. God.
Yeah, really eerie.
Very dark.
So they go in there. They're trying to find Blair, but pretty much he's escaped. And he was using components from the helicopter and, you know, the facility to assemble like a ship, you know.
Which looked cool.
Looked cool.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they destroy it. And then upon the return, Childs is missing. They don't know where he is. And then shortly after that, the power generator is destroyed. And it's at this point, they realize the situation they're in. They're dead, you know. The station's going to lose heat and they're going to freeze to death. As characters, normal movie characters or anything, you would expect at this situation that they would give up or something, but they want to make sure that this thing isn't frozen for the rescue crew that comes along months later, because then that crew is screwed and then humanity's screwed. So they take it upon themselves to see this situation through, which I like. Obviously, it shows a lot about McCready's character.
It shows a lot about just like all of their characters, honestly.
And it plays into the humanity of it too, you know, like the best of humanity. Obviously, they want to look out for everyone, you know.
Yeah.
So they realize they're technically dead, but the thing intends, they kind of put it together. The thing wants to freeze again. It wants to sleep. Rescue crew finds it and attacks them. Yeah.
That's a lot of animal instincts.
Yeah. Oh, and then I forgot, Gary was still alive as well. So Gary and Knowles and McCready agree that the thing cannot be allowed to escape. So they intend to explode the facility, basically just to be rid of it and everything. And while they're setting up explosives throughout this whole place, and they have like fire, Molotovs and everything, they're lighting things on fire to get the temperature spiking. So that way this thing comes out and they can kill it. Blair shows back up and he kills Gary. His reveal really freaked me out. He just pops up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then he like puts his hand in his face.
Oh my God.
I was like, what the heck?
There was a lot going through my head, no pun intended, when that scene was happening. I was like, oh no, are they going to make it out of this alive or not? Are they just done?
And obviously they're setting up explosives, and then McCready realizes he calls out for Knowles, and Knowles isn't there, and he's like, well shit, you know, fucking the thing's probably there, it got him.
Yeah.
And then the ground like basically starts like exploding, like flying up all the way towards McCready. Great effect. It's just like the snow's flying up.
It's like the monster's just gotten bigger now.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit. And then the monster comes out full form, and again, it's an amalgamation of everything. You see a dog head, you see a human face, you see these arms on it that look crazy. You see, it really shows more that this thing probably has assimilated countless life forms that we don't even know what they are, you know? And it's great. It's just great practical effects. They use a little stop motion in this part, which I'm like,
that's awesome.
If they ramp up how big this thing is, I get why they need to do that, you know? Because it looks amazing. And then McCready, you know, throws dynamite at it. It explodes. He quickly gets out of there. It's just very simple, very quiet. He's basically walking among the wreckage of this facility. There's fire everywhere. So obviously he's fine for now, but he's going to die, you know? Rescue crew's not coming. So McCready goes to this area and he sits down and he's about to, you know, basically he's gonna die. There's not much he can do. And then Childs pops up in the background, and the two have a dialogue, and basically McCready's like, well, where were you, Childs? And Childs says, I thought I saw Blair, so I ran out after him, but I got lost in the snow. There's an uneasiness to this scene. You could tell that they're kind of both questioning each other, because again, up to this point, they haven't trusted anyone.
And he's the only one. McCready is like the only one that comes back too from the crew. So it's
exactly. So it's like, you're left here, I'm left here. We don't know. And very great dialogue. McCready's like, well, even if either one of us is the thing, we're not much shape to do anything about it. And Charles is like, so what do we do? And McCready's like, why don't we just sit here for a while and see what happens?
It gave me chills. I was like,
and then McCready hands him the bottle, and right as Childs drinks it, the theme starts playing, and it starts to play throughout the ending. As he's drinking it, McCready kind of chuckles a little bit, and then it goes to establishing shot of the facility, flames everywhere, and then it ends. Amazing.
Wow.
This ending has been debated for 40 years now, over 40 years. No one knows who's the thing at the end. Obviously, it could be Childs, could be McCready. Technically, we've been with McCready this whole time, so people assume it's not him. But there's also that period where he was outside of the facility on his own, and they didn't completely show him the whole time.
Yeah.
So we don't really know exactly what's going on, but it's been heavily theorized that McCready, they had these bottles and they replaced them, the alcohol in them, with petrol, basically as an igniter for these flames. So in the end, very much like the beginning, he hands the bottle to Childs as a test. Childs, if he's an alien, he's going to try to drink it to play along. But if he's drinking a chemical that he doesn't know what it is, he's not going to have a reaction. So a lot of people theorize that's why McCready kind of chuckles, because it's like, I got you. I know you're the alien because this isn't alcohol. It's basically a chemical. And Childs just drinks it. And it's like the beginning, he puts the alcohol drink into the chess machine because he basically lost, And it's very much like a foreshadowing.
Wow.
That's one theory. I've seen theories the other way where McCready, when he goes missing, could have had all this stuff happen to him, and the alien comes back to like gain trust amongst everyone. Just so that way he can reveal pretty much he's the thing at the end. But then the theme plays out, and it's just absolutely amazing. Very open-ended kind of ending, which I wasn't expecting, Obviously, it's bold. It's a bold decision to end the movie that way. But
it surprised me for sure.
Yeah, it's
like,
great.
Wow. I think I'm probably, at the moment, until I see it again, I'm probably more on the side that I think McCready is the thing, because he does get nearly attacked by the thing, and he's also like the only one there left. So I feel like him kind of smiling is him maybe.
That too.
Yeah, just like him like revealing kind of almost his intentions almost.
Yep.
So I feel like I'm on that side at the moment.
That's
but
great.
We'll see when I rewatch it again what's how I kind of feel about that ending now, just knowing everything I've watched.
Yep. And there's so much again in what was shown, but there's a lot of implications in what isn't shown.
Oh, and his ripped clothes too.
That too. Yeah.
I also feel like
try to hide them, Yeah. And
because I feel like that's the thing with the thing is like it's a really smart alien almost, It's not dumb. It's not like just like an alien out of like 1,000, It's like it has like a mind of its own, and it's surprisingly just super intelligent. So I kind of just see that side, and I'm just kind of like, it has to be McCready. I think it is.
And there's people have seen, and they've asked John Carpenter when he's like lit the scenes. There's one scene where Palmer, obviously, they're testing the blood, and he's revealed to be the thing. In that scene, there's a lighting thing that's done on everyone in there. There's a glare in everyone's eyes. and the only one who doesn't have a glare is Palmer, and he ends up being the Thing.
Oh, wow.
So people think, well, okay, in that scene, that's kind of the giveaway is the glare. They don't see a reflection in their eyes. And then in the end, Childs doesn't have a glare in his eyes, but McCready does. It's like, oh, okay. And then also, people have also said in the end, you see McCready's breath. He's breathing everything, you see very real. He's, taking breath. You see the exhales. And in Childs, you don't see exhales or anything on him at all.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of stuff. But that's why I love this movie. Like that's such a great ending. And I haven't seen anything like that to where it's just been so heavily debated. Even recently, Stephen Colbert, he's a big fan.
Okay.
He had John Carpenter on his show, and he's like, I don't want to know who it is, but I just want to know, do you know who the Thing is? And John Carpenter, he's like, I do know who it is. And he's like, I'm not going to say it, but I do know who it is. So it's amazing. I don't know. Like the fact that this ending has been debated for so long really shows you how effective it was,
Yeah.
And I love it. I think that's one of my favorite, most ambiguous endings I've seen,
Easily.
And not just to mention the music, the theme, everything
Comes in. It's so incredible.
so great.
So I'm curious, what side are you on with the ending?
I think McCready's human. The only thing that does throw me for a loop is those clothes and when he goes missing. But part of me wonders, did someone else stage that to make it look like he was the Thing so that way they wouldn't trust him,
Okay.
That's the only thing. There's so much that draws into question. It's just like, it really is like this strategic chess game, that this alien's playing with humans, It's absolutely great. Obviously, pop culture. This inspired Among Us. We all know Among Us. It's just such a popular game and everything.
Yeah, Gravity Falls actually references it in one of the episodes in season 2. That's like really awesome.
Yeah.
There's another remake of the Thing too from 2011,
Yep.
which I have not seen, so I can't say anything about it.
It's not bad, but it's nowhere near this movie.
Yeah, I would imagine, obviously.
I recommend watching it. It sucks with that movie. They made so much practical effects for it. And I don't know, this is probably one of the most extreme instances I've seen where studios come in and force their own will upon the creative team.
Interferes. Yeah.
They made them cover up all of the practical effects in that movie with CGI. All of them.
That's dumb.
And it's so dated. It looks so terrible. And hearing the director and everything say, like, we made all these effects. Like, we took time to honor the original and make animatronics, things like that. But the studio didn't want to use them. They thought it wasn't effective. And it's really unfortunate, but that's one of the most extreme situations I've seen of a studio interfering. Like that completely just ruins the movie. It's just like, damn. They could have been good, with the effects. Granted, the story's not as good and everything, but that's just so unfortunate. And that's just such like a head, it's just like, what are you thinking? Like, that's such a head slap. Like, wait, like what? Why would you cover those up? I don't know. And especially seeing the effects they were working on behind the scenes, they look great. They looked amazing. But yeah, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. If I was putting together a top 10 list, it's probably even in the top 5. The performances are absolutely amazing. The music's amazing. And to me, these are my favorite practical effects I've ever seen in a movie. And at the time, it was very widely hated on. This movie is,
Really?
I think, one of the first instances I've seen where the coin completely flips. When this movie came out, I believe it was either 2 weeks before or after E.T. came out, And
Oh,
obviously E.T. is just super praised and loved. It's such a heartfelt,
more heartwarming, lighthearted compared to
yeah.
this.
So I don't think audiences were ready to see this take on
Okay,
aliens.
I got you.
And
Yeah.
people hated it. People hated this movie.
Wow.
Critics hated this movie. They thought it was uh, just not a good,
Movie.
not a good movie. Even
Roger Ebert.
Roger Ebert, he hated this movie.
Wow.
And he said the effects were just
Terrible.
pointless.
Really?
He was like,
Wow.
they're disgusting for the sake of being gross. But again, I think when you're taking into terms the story, a simulation,
No,
this
it
thing
works.
taking on other life forms and stuff, I think this does a really good job for showing that.
Mm-hmm.
The atmosphere is absolutely amazing. Cinematography is amazing. I have no complaints about this movie. I watch it all the time. And every time I watch it, it immediately grabs my attention.
Yeah,
And, I'm telling you,
absolutely.
even watching this movie again, like I was just like, I love this movie so much. So for me, it's a 10 out of 10. It's my favorite horror movie of all time. I know some other people won't think that way, and that's fine. A lot of people do think this way now, but ever since I saw it as a kid, I've just loved this movie, and I just try to show it to as many people as I can, So,
Nice.
yeah. Wallied, what are you thinking?
Yeah, this was an absolute ride from start to finish. This is one of the scariest films I think I've ever seen, and a film that I have just thought about nonstop since seeing it yesterday. I love a lot of the mystery of the film. The acting is incredible. I love the atmosphere that John Carpenter creates with this film. And that's just one thing with John Carpenter. I guess I just really love his atmosphere because I also rewatched the original Halloween, and I was like, man, like he knows how to create a perfect eerie atmosphere with a lot of his movies. And yeah, just incredible effects, probably some of the best practical effects I've ever seen in a film, period. Yeah, and it goes by so fast too. I was kind of shocked that I was like an hour into it, when I
Yeah.
paused it. I was like, whoa, like that is all right. You have me sold on it. And yeah, for that and many other reasons that we talked about. I think for now, I'm probably going to say this is my favorite Carpenter film at the moment. I'm like between this and Halloween for being my favorite. So yeah, yeah, I'd easily give this a 10. I can't see anything wrong with it. Everything about this film works. It's just perfect. Some of the best music I think I've heard in any horror film, period. The way
Amazing.
it uses music is like perfect. And the way it uses ambiance and sound design, it just makes it even more scarier. And I'm happy I finally saw it. So yeah, it's perfect. It's a 10 from me.
Amazing. Can't recommend it enough, guys. It's on Peacock right now. Please check it out. Sorry for fanboying for so long, but thank you. Like, I really love talking about this movie. It is just such an immersive film, and just to think like it came out in the 80s and people are still talking about
That's
it.
crazy.
It's inspired who knows how many filmmakers,
How many horror films too,
And
especially body horror stuff too.
and not just to mention the switch, this movie was hated when it came out. It was truly ahead of its time. And
I'm glad it has a reevaluation now. Yeah.
it's just, to me, this is shocking. Like, I can't imagine being in that time period and watching this and just being so effective that it's just disturbing and you don't want to watch it
Ever again. Yeah.
but yeah, absolutely great.
Great recommendation.
I love it so
Finally.
much. Yep, finally. Yeah, one of the things that comes into play with this movie is it is a remake, and there's one that follows it. However, I do think this it was done in the right way, and this is something that I've said before on the show, where there's kind of like an original source material, and rather than copying the first movie, it kind of goes more into the source material in which it was based on. Obviously in the 50s when they were making this, I think they probably realized, well, we can't portray a simulation, that whole aspect of paranoia. We can't really do that in film, like how would that even work? So they kind of took it out. And I feel like John Carpenter wanting to show that and feeling like he could pull it off in a good way, and the effects and everything, it was a perfect time to kind of bring that in. And it just adds a whole new layer that the original film didn't have. Again, the original film, the alien's very much like a Frankenstein, just kind of walking around and everything. So yeah, this adds a whole new layer that the original film didn't have. So the question I want to ask is, what remakes do we like more than the original? I know we're in the period now where everything's getting remade. Tons of remakes are happening, and usually they're, for the most part, they're not good. But who knows? There could be a case where it's like this movie, the remake actually, in your own opinion, surpasses the original in every way. And I feel this movie is a great example of that. Wally, did you have any instances where that's happened for you?
Yeah, I will say though, I haven't seen the original of this film, but I would say Scarface by Brian De Palma, I think is like a really good remake. I feel like the acting in it is just incredible. It's such a fantastic character study from start to finish. Even though the film is like nearly 3 hours, it's like you get to see this guy's whole journey, rise and fall of like Tony Montana, and it's a really awesome like story about like how the business of like crime and drugs can affect somebody psychologically. And I think it just, I don't know, it's a really well done film. The music is incredible. I love, again, the acting is phenomenal. I love so much of the story and just the relationship Tony Montana has with his friend and that whole betrayal and his romance. It's a very, very great character study. And I am curious to see the original 40s one to see how much it differs from this like the 80s one, but I would say Scarface comes to mind for me. How about you?
For me, one that I saw when it came out, I was super amped for it from the moment I heard about it, and I just loved it so much. Is the Coen brothers' take on True Grit. The original, obviously, John Wayne, super famous, super big at the time. However, I do notice when I watch the original, it feels a little dated, and no disrespecting the performances or anything, but John Wayne has his flair, and he just kind of does his thing, which isn't a bad thing, but performances and things kind of start to blend together, and you're like, this
is he just doing the typecasting, same character? I got you.
But however, when the Coen brothers did True Grit, Jeff Bridges absolutely nails Rooster Cogburn. He does such a great job with his take on it. And, the way he talks, the way he walks around in the movie, and not even to mention Matt Damon, one of the best. I know we were talking about Matt Damon earlier in the podcast, but one of my favorite performances by Matt Damon as
cool.
As the Texas Ranger, LaBeef. A lot of humor in the movie, too, which I love with the Coen brothers. They have that dark humor side. And these characters are just so different from each other, yet they're all put together to achieve this goal. And one of probably my favorite introducing performances ever in a movie was Haley Steinfeld. She got nominated for an Academy Award for this movie, and she was 14 at the time. And she does absolutely amazing. There's a scene where she's talking with this pretty much bank owner, and it's the dialogue back and forth. It's like 5 minutes. Is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. One day I'm gonna recommend this movie to talk about. It's one of my favorite westerns.
Oh, cool.
Just absolutely amazing, and to me, it just surpasses the original in every way. The music, the acting, just top notch. It's just like when those movies come out, it really is just like I don't really have a need to kind of watch the original anymore.
Yeah.
I like, granted, The Thing from Another World, I like it. It's great. It's, obviously is a product of the time and everything, but never once am I like, yeah, I'm going to watch that over the John Carpenter thing, Or same with True Grit. I'm like, I really don't need to watch the John Wayne version. This one's for me, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess that's what it is. But I guess I wanted to kind of ask a question that had more positivity because I know reboots and everything are just super hated on.
Leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And I know for me, especially because I'm a massive Disney fan, I like a lot of my favorite Disney Renaissance films have been remade and they just are not as good as like the original films, like Mulan, like The Lion King, like Beauty and the Beast. You know, it's just like all the flavor is just gone, you know, when they remake them. So it is cool to kind of see like a positive. I feel like it's rare we get like a positive remake where it's like it's better than the original, you know.
It is rare. I think what I would like to see more from people is to be more open-ended when that stuff does happen. Unless they're remaking a perfect movie. Like, that's the only instance where I can see, okay, well, what's the point, you know? Like, I know there's always been talk of eventually when Robert Zemeckis passes away, rebooting Back to the Future, and I'm like, there's no point. Like, the original is just absolutely
it's perfect in every way.
Like,
it's why
you don't need to remake it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the instances where I was talking about, like True Grit, I mean, nowadays I can't really show that movie. It's dated, you know. Younger audiences might just turn it off, you know, things like that. They won't care.
And I think the other thing too that kind of bugs me is when I see foreign films get remade into like more American films, and it's just like not as good, and it's like you miss the whole cultural context of like why that film works, you know. Like I don't want to dive too deep into it, but like Spike Lee's Old Boy is like, what even was that? You know, it's like they use hammers in the action sequence, but it's like the reason they use hammers in the original, it's because like guns are banned in Korea, you know? That's the only reason why that scene works, you know? It's because you have that cultural context. And it's like you strip that back and you make it into like, oh, look how cool he is. It's like, well, you just missed the whole point of that movie, you know? So but that's one type of remake aside from like the Disney remakes that bugs me the most is when I see foreign films get turned into like an Americanized version, I guess, of it. It's like, yeah, this doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't agree with a lot of them. However, I think there's reason. Obviously, they just want the story to be told to American audiences. They think it's worth telling. They think it's worth showing. However, there needs to be more of a genuine side into what you're doing, you know, because oftentimes it just feels like
cash grabby.
I want to repaint this to be under my own name, you know, when it doesn't feel like in service of the original, you know. But again, like with remakes and things, there are instances where this happens, you know, and I guess that's always my interpretation going into remakes and stuff. Unless it's an absolutely perfect movie, I'm kind of open for it. If someone wants to remake something, I'll check it out. I'm not gonna just immediately, I'm not gonna see. I'm gonna boycott that movie. No, I don't really do that. I kind of like seeing a modern take on it and seeing, okay, well, what are they gonna change?
What's their interpretation?
What are they gonna leave out? Exactly.
Yeah.
And who knows, if you're more open-ended like that, there could be a case where, you know, your favorite movie is improved upon and has a different light on it now. I just noticed there's a lot of negativity with reboots, remakes, things like that. But people need to also realize there are instances where it works, you know. At least that's my interpretation on everything. Yeah. All right. That was the only question I have. This is a long review. I apologize, everyone. It's just one of my favorite movies of all time. So please check it out if you haven't seen it yet.
Glad I finally saw it.
Yeah. So we're actually done with the Halloween horror all-inclusive, no frills extravaganza, and we will pick it back up in the year of 2025. There's a lot of great movies that I left out. I'm super excited to talk about them. So if the urge ever comes around where I want to refer something like that, I'll probably do it, but I'm going to try to save them for this Halloween season. But thank you guys for joining us over these past couple weeks. We talked about a lot of great movies, and we hope that you guys feel encouraged enough to check them out. That's what this whole show is about. And next week, we're going to be back into our normal recommendations for a little bit. So I guess, Wallied, what are we going to be talking about?
Yeah. So I had a hard time trying to figure out what I was going to recommend, but okay, I have a question. Could we do a double feature next episode? Should we do like 2 movies?
It might be a little challenging. I would be open to it, but then I feel like my next week I would want to do a double feature as well, which I'm like, I don't know. What were you thinking?
All right, so they're both Ghibli films. I have been dying to talk about this film for a very, very long time. It is my favorite film ever made. So the film I'm going to recommend is Whisper of the Heart by Yoshifumi Kondo. But I'm not only going to recommend Whisper of the Heart, I am also going to recommend The Cat Returns, too, by Hiroyuki Morita. And it involves, it's more of like a spin-off, I guess, but I feel like the two of them work together as like a double piece. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, these films are very great. I love these films so much. I'm gonna just save my thoughts for the next episode, but these are some of the best films I've ever seen, and it's like after watching Whisper of the Heart, it makes me love Cat Returns even more. So yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about next episode, and I hope you guys enjoy them. I love these films so much, and I have a lot to say about them. So yeah, if you guys don't want to be spoiled for Whisper of the Heart and The Cat Returns, both from Studio Ghibli, watch them before the next episode comes out.
All right. We have a long episode ahead of us, guys. So we hope you join us for both of those. Probably going to be over the 2-hour mark, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, be ready for that one. And yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We had a great time today, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Good day and good night, mates.